The unrelenting rain pounded the roof like the fists of the damned. Emma sat huddled on the couch, blankets wrapped tight around her shivering body. The fire in the hearth had gone out hours ago. Not that it mattered. No amount of fire could warm the bone-deep chill brought by this unnatural storm. Outside, the world was lost to the torrential downpour. It had rained for 3 days and 3 nights, showing no signs of stopping. All dirt roads were now bogs of sinking mud. Entire trees had been ripped from the ground, tossed about like twigs. And somewhere out in that endless deluge was Paul. Her husband had ventured to the market 2 days ago, before the worst of the rains had hit. Emma hadn't heard from him since. She had pleaded with the sheriff to form a search party, but it was useless. No one could traverse the flooded landscape. Just wait it out, they told her. But the waiting was tearing her apart inside. A crash of thunder made Emma jump. She glanced nervously at the back door. For a moment, she thought she saw a silhouette lurking on the porch. A trick of the shadows? Or something more sinister? The wind howled, screaming through the cracks and gaps of the old house. It almost sounded as if words lurked within that banshee wail. Words of warning, or of hunger. Emma stood on shaky legs, clutching a flashlight. She had to check, had to know if Paul was out there. Thunder boomed again as she crept across the dark house. Her heart pounded wildly in her chest. Fumbling with the locks, Emma threw open the back door. Rain lashed viciously at her face as the wind threatened to tear the door from her grasp. As lightning flashed, she saw him. A body crumpled on the porch. Paul. No, 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 she sobbed, kneeling beside her husband's lifeless form. His skin was icy to the touch, his clothes soaked and filthy. Emma screamed into the endless rain, the sound lost to the roaring storm. Something had brought Paul back here. Something evil, awakened by the deluge. It was out there still, lurking in the shadows, coming for her next. The horrors unleashed by the storm were far from over. Emma sobbed over her husband's lifeless body. Paul was cold as ice, his clothes soaked and caked in mud. She had screamed into the darkness, but her cries were drowned out by the relentless rainstorm. Something had brought Paul back here. Something evil awakened by the endless deluge. The rain had become a harbinger of death. Emma knew she had to get inside. It was no longer safe out here in the storm's cruel embrace. She hooked her arms under Paul's shoulders and dragged his limp body through the mud and up the porch steps. Thunder crashed overhead as Emma strained to get the door open. A bolt of lightning revealed a dark figure standing in the trees nearby, watching her. A strangled cry escaped Emma's lips as she finally pulled Paul inside and slammed the door shut. She collapsed to the floor, her body racked with sobs. Paul's empty eyes stared up at the ceiling as she cradled his head in her lap. He was gone. Whatever malevolent force controlled this storm had taken him. The house creaked and groaned as the winds battered it relentlessly. Outside, through the deafening roar of rain, Emma thought she heard footsteps circling the porch. She gasped as the doorknob slowly began to turn. Desperate, she dragged Paul's body in front of the door. She would not let this evil in. The knob stopped turning as she braced herself against the door. The footsteps moved away. But Emma knew it was not over. She was trapped here, alone with her husband's corpse as the storm raged on. There would be no escape from this endless night and the horrors it had wrought. The rain would not stop, not until it had buried them both. Emma knelt over her husband's body, her tears mixing with the rain streaming down her face. Thunder crashed outside as the wind threatened to tear the house apart. She had to find a way out of this nightmare. Gripping a flashlight, Emma descended the creaking basement stairs. Gusts of frigid air swirled up from below. The flashlight flickered as Emma searched for something, anything to defend herself. Then her blood turned to ice as the beam illuminated a trail of muddy footprints on the floor. They led right to the bottom of the stairs where she now stood. Spinning around, Emma cried out in horror. There, lurking in the shadows, stood a pale, emaciated figure. It was Paul, or the twisted demonic shell of what had once been her husband. "No!" Emma screamed as the Paul creature shambling towards her. She grabbed a shovel and swung it violently, striking the monster across the face. It recoiled with an unearthly shriek. Emma fled upstairs and slammed the basement door shut. She had to escape, but she knew the evil entity controlling the storm would never let her leave this house alive. The back door suddenly burst open, torn from its hinges by the raging winds. Rain blew in as the storm invaded the house. The windows shattered one by one as Emma cowered on the floor. A bolt of lightning revealed the Paul monster's grotesque silhouette in the doorway. It was beckoning her outside into the dark tempest. "I won't let you take me too," Emma cried defiantly. She reached for the oil lamps and hurled them to the floor. Flames erupted, spreading rapidly as the storm fed the growing inferno. The house became an abyss of fire and smoke. The Paul creature wailed in anguish as Emma stumbled blindly through the blaze, determined to escape this hellish nightmare. She would rather die than become a prisoner of this eternal rain. Choking on acrid smoke, Emma burst through the back door into the drenching downpour. Behind her, the house crackled and popped as it succumbed to the hungry flames. Thunder boomed overhead as Emma fled into the flooded night, praying the rain would finally stop and this nightmare would end. Emma ran blindly into the stormy darkness, the flames engulfing her home, lighting up the night behind her. She sloshed through deep mud, struggling to see through the relentless rain. In the flashes of lightning, she spotted a dilapidated barn up ahead. Shivering violently, Emma made her way inside, out of the torrential downpour. It was dry but cold within the barn. Thunder shook the walls as Emma huddled in a corner, trying to catch her breath. But her relief quickly turned to horror. Hanging from the rafters were mutilated animal carcasses, swaying in the wind, gusting through broken windows. Bloody handprints covered the walls. This was no mere barn. It was a slaughterhouse. Heavy footsteps at the entrance made Emma gasp. She ducked behind rotted crates, peering between the slats. Through the darkness, she could make out a hulking figure, its long arms dragging the ground. The reanimated Paul creature had followed her here. It paused, seeming to sniff the air, then began slowly moving between the hanging animal corpses, searching for her. Emma crouched lower, clamping a hand over her mouth to quiet her panicked breathing. But it was no use. The creature stopped, turning towards the crates where she hid. It let out an unearthly wail and flung the crates aside with inhuman strength. Emma screamed as the monster towered over her. She was trapped. Suddenly, a blinding light filled the barn. The Paul creature shrieked, shielding its face. Squinting, Emma saw a pickup truck pulling into the barn, its headlights trained on the monster. "Get in!" yelled a man's voice. Emma scrambled to her feet and jumped into the truck just as the creature lunged for her. Bullets peppered the barn walls as they sped off into the storm. "Who are you?" Emma gasped. "You saved me." "Name's Mike," he said, eyes fixed on the flooded road. "I've been hunting that thing since the storm started." Emma shuddered, the horrors she had witnessed flooding back. As they drove on, the rain slowly began to dissipate. The nightmarish storm was finally ending. But what horrors had it unleashed? And could they be stopped? Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed the content from Night Butcher, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications to be the first to hear our latest chilling tales.